Hey, Aaron Chambers here. Welcome to episode 39 of Enjoy the Journey with Aaron Chambers. I am so glad you found my podcast. I have interesting conversations with interesting people, and that's who I'm talking to today. I'm talking to Sherry Surratt. Sherry Surratt is a very fascinating person, brilliant, just a great leader. She's helped our church in particular with leadership strategy. She's currently the vice president of onehope.net. It's a mission organization that's doing a great work, also focusing on young people in a really creative and dynamic way. She's also the director of leadership strategy for the Rethink Group, affiliated with Orange. She's just doing a lot of great things. She's an author, she's a speaker, and an incredible person. In this conversation, we talk about women in leadership, which is a fascinating conversation. We talk about gender, role models, how to develop women in leadership, and also we talk about mentoring. She's a big believer in mentoring, and I am too. So that's a fun thing to talk about. All right. Hey, if you like my podcast, would you give it a thumbs up, give it 5 stars, give it a good review? Would you let somebody know about it, or would you subscribe? Those things would all be so helpful because I want to make podcasts that help you to enjoy your journey. All right. So please, please, please help spread the word about this podcast. I'd be so grateful. All right. Well, I hope you enjoy this conversation, and I do hope you enjoy your journey. All right, guys, I'm so excited for this conversation. Sherry Surratt is one of my favorite people in the whole world. I've got to know her and her husband over the past few years, and I love Sherry. I love how you think. I love how you communicate and how you use your gifts in such just a glorious way. So Sherry, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation today.
Oh, Aaron, I'm glad to be here. And you are one of Geoff and my husband Geoff's favorite people as well, because one of the things that happens every time we're together is you make us laugh, which I love it when leaders and people in ministry don't take themselves too seriously, and they just help bring humor to the situation.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, well, it's my coping mechanism, Sherry, but you'd understand that because you're pretty smart. There you go. Oh, wow. Okay, so Sherry, what can't you do? What can't you do? Okay, so you've written books, right?
I have.
Yep. Okay, so you've written several. You wrote Together with Geoff a couple of years ago. Which one of your books is, I mean, they're like your kids. So which one of your books, as you sit here right now, you're awfully fond of?
Yes, Aaron. I have 2 kids. I love them both exactly the same. But my favorite book that I wrote in partnership with Jenny Catron actually is about women in leadership. And I just have a passion for leadership in general, and a passion for women being encouraged to step up to their calling, to develop confidence, to have courage. I really don't believe, and Jenny doesn't either, that women leaders develop any different than men leaders do. However, they do, because of their gender, face specific things that men do not. And that's why we wrote the book. When Jenny and I wrote Just Lead, that's the title of the book.
Okay.
And our subtitle is A No Whining, No Complaining Guide for Women Leaders in the Church. We looked around and we said, what else is out there for women leaders that goes past what to wear on stage and things like that? What we really wanted to get at was the hard leadership questions about how do you lead men? How do you lead other women who are difficult? And that is a particular dynamic that women face, which they'll face some resistance from other women. And so we wanted to tackle those types of issues. And so while I love the latest book that Geoff and I wrote together on being married and in ministry together, my heart lends toward leadership.
Yeah, we brought you in and you did a leadership seminar for us, and we've never really reported back to you efficiently how that impacted us, but it was really revolutionary for us. And okay, let me so with that in mind, and knowing you're so adept at leadership, and so what are the blind spots? Because right now there are male pastors that have to be listening to this podcast thinking, well, we don't have a problem with women in leadership. We don't do anything. There's nothing about our culture. We do everything we can to lift up women. What are some of the blind spots that we have? like we being male pastors, we being churches, we being parachurch, or even businesses, when it comes to empowering and equipping and positioning women for leadership?
Yeah, I heard a really interesting podcast the other day that talked about the difference between equality and equity. A lot of times we will pay attention to, are we treating leaders equally, right? But that actually isn't necessarily the question when it comes to male and female leaders. So if I could use the example of, if you and I were going to peek over a fence, right? You're taller than I am, Aaron. So equality would say that we would need the same size step stool to stand on to peek over the fence. It probably would get you, tall enough to be able to peek over. It wouldn't for me, even though we were using the same size step stool. Equity means, think about the disadvantages that may be present and make room for that. So in that instance with the fence, I would need a taller step stool to be able to peek over the fence, right? In church world with women, there are some things that women face that really aren't necessarily evident. For example, when you think about your strongest woman leader in your organization or in your church, are there other women leaders that can pour into her, that are there as role models that she can look to and be inspired by? As that woman leader looks around, there's going to be plenty of guys to be able to be inspired by, and that's great too. But women leaders need to have a connection with other great leaders, women leaders. And, I think the other blind spot can be in development. So, especially when it comes to speaking on the weekend, or, doing something on the main stage, uh, we lend a lot of development to our guys, which is great. We needs to do that, but I think we have to really look around and say, are we treating our women potential speakers and potential women on stage? Are we treating them the same? Are we giving them the same great opportunities? So I'll use an example at Seacoast Church. I was on staff at Seacoast Church out in Charleston, South Carolina. And I got the occasional opportunity to speak on the weekend. And I would look around at other young male speakers. And here's what was happening: the lead pastor, or even my husband, who is the executive pastor, would take them aside and give them direct feedback after they spoke and really help them develop. Nobody did that to me. And I think it might have been because because I was a woman, they were treating me with kid gloves. They were afraid I was going to take offense or bust into tears,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, I would have been such a better speaker had somebody poured into me like they did our young male speakers. And it's not just speaking, it's leading as well. Look and see, does your church or organization have a blind spot in how you give feedback to women versus how you give feedback to men? And I just want to say to the ladies listening, this is really important, because your reaction in these situations determines what the future will be. If you are a woman and you are given direct feedback, just uh, welcome it. See how you can apply it. Try to remove emotion from it. Try to take the stance of, they're giving me feedback because they care about me and want me to be better, not because they're trying to pick at me. Men and women can both take that stance, but I just want to say to my sisters, right? Uh, um, uh, Receive input openly and fully, because it determines on how much future feedback you will get.
Is there anything else you want to say to the young women who may feel God's call into, let's talk about the church in particular,
Yeah.
she may feel God's call into ministry, and any other words of advice for them? Because I love that when you looked at the camera and spoke, said that's such good stuff.
Yeah. There's so much, I'm going to use the word mess. There's so much mess still in the church with, can women do this? Can women do that? And I want to say to women, let God be your guide, right? God is the one who built you. God knows the gifts and strengths that you have, right? Spend time with Him and really honestly examine, God, are you calling me to this opportunity? Sit with others who can have godly perspective with you and really let them speak into your life. Spend time with God alone and let God and you work out your calling together. There are going to be lots of voices who are going to speak in and go, you're a woman, you can't do that. Or because the Bible says this, you can't do that. We want to listen to godly counsel, but I think my word is here, let God be your guide. Ladies, sometimes will get very easily discouraged by other voices. And I think my word of encouragement is let God be your primary voice.
Okay, so if I'm working with you, I want to process this just a little bit more with you. If I'm
Yeah.
working with you, there's some things I'm assuming, and I want to hear your perspective on this as a leader. Okay, so if you're on my team, if we're sitting in a room together, I'm looking at you thinking she's got wisdom. And honestly, I'm just gonna be honest with you. Some of this comes from just interacting with men and women, doing marriage counseling, relationship counseling. It needs to be generalities, but generally speaking, Sherry, if I'm sitting at a table with you, and I want to know, is this insulting? Is this empowering? Because I know I'm not alone with this. So if I'm sitting in a room with you, I'm thinking, okay, she's got some wisdom and perspective that I don't have, simply from, generally speaking, from the fact that the way God made her, she sees the world holistically. Like she can see how things fit together, and she can help me avoid landmines that I would just fall onto. Also, I'm thinking she uses words probably in a way that I don't, but in a really good way. Like a way to, like, I will tend to use words like tools. And you talked about, when somebody's giving you constructive criticism, taking it well as a young female. And I'm thinking, so if I'm interacting with Sherry, I'm thinking, okay, so she, generally speaking, may process words differently than I do and use words differently than I do, in a way that will make all the team more effective. Um, Also, I'm thinking, okay, she, because she sees the world holistically, I if we have a harsh encounter, I may need to circle back and just kind of make sure that we're okay. Whereas I'm just being honest with you. Some guys think, well, if I have a hard conversation with a guy, 3 hours later, we're good to go. I look at those as assets when I'm sitting, like if I'm sitting across the table from you, I'm looking at this as an asset, but I want to be hypersensitive to being like, is that fine? Is that cool? Is that insulting? Is that something that is healthy? Like, can you help me there?
Yeah. And if I'm understanding your question right, should you expect more emotion or different feelings from a woman leader than you would a man? And I think this is a something I really feel passionate about. A lot of times we have, and we don't realize it, we have different expectations for a woman leader than we do a man leader. Uh,
Okay.
there will be times when women will bring some emotion to a conversation, and that's not a bad thing at all. I think
Mhm.
that's just leaning into how God wired us to be. Um, but I think sometimes, and I've seen it myself, men will tippy toe around a woman in conversation because they're afraid she's going to get too emotional. And when we do that, we are not serving her well.
Mhm.
I think, I said before, men and women leaders don't really develop any differently. A correlation to that is we shouldn't have different expectations for them either.
Mhm.
Aaron, if you and I had, uh, let's just say you and I had a really good argument, right, at the
Mhm.
table, and I got a little quiet, and which sometimes happens because I'm processing, right? Should you circle back and just check in and make sure that I'm okay later? Absolutely, absolutely. But also, I have a responsibility in that too. If I walk away and I got quiet, right, and I am maybe a little hurt at something that you said, it's my responsibility as a woman leader to also come to you to say, Aaron, let's talk about that. Aaron, I know that you affirm me as a leader. I know you love me as a leader, right? So let's just talk about that. This is the thing that a lot of women leaders don't do. They just keep the hurt to themselves. They stuff it down, right? They let it become an issue in their own leadership life. And that's on us. That's on us as women leaders. Just like you have a responsibility out of love and caring of me because I'm a human, you want to
Hmm.
circle back. I have a responsibility to speak up if there has been something that I feel like is between us. Does that
Hmm.
make sense? Did I answer
Yeah,
your question?
yeah, makes sense. Yeah, you didn't answer my question, and I was also kind of looking at, um, and I want to make sure it's a healthy. I don't want to use the word bias, but a healthy, maybe a healthy perspective, maybe a bias. But I also, I just being raised with really strong women, I feel like my life has been blessed with in so many ways by the wisdom and perspective that the strong women in my life and on my team here at the church, like that they bring. And I want to make sure, is that a healthy perspective to, because I feel like, like you talk about God, the way God made us, I feel like my wife has a perspective that I don't have. She will say, hey, that situation is going to blow up, you need to be really careful. Or she'll say, that person is toxic. I'm like, no, they're awesome. She's like, no, they're toxic, you need to watch that. And what I found on my team is and it may not be fair, I may be putting unrealistic expectations on them, but I look at some of the women on my team in particular, as just, hey, let's run this by her. I want to hear if we're, with this decision, if we're gonna step on a landmine because we're being idiots. And
Aaron, that's a great thing to do. I think that's just an incredible leadership thing. Um, Sometimes women will wait to be invited to express their opinion. And so sometimes you need to go to a woman and say, what do you think about that? I try to do that for Geoff as well, because while Geoff sees things I don't, I also can see things he doesn't. And I think a lot of women have, it's almost like a spidey sense, right? When
mhm,
it comes to maybe dynamics going on in the room, we just tend to sometimes read people a little bit better than some men leaders. And so I will speak up to Geoff and I'll go, something's off with that. You need to circle back around there. And I have a great husband who listens to that. He'll
mhm,
ask, he'll say, you were in that meeting, what did you see, what did you think, right? um, and here's something else too for men leaders. Women sometimes need time to process things, so they'll be in a meeting, they're not really saying anything, and if my husband's leading the meeting, here's what he'll do. He'll look at a woman and he'll make eye contact with her to kind of send a little signal, I'm coming at you, right? And then he'll say, Deborah, what did you think about that? Deborah, I want to hear your opinion on that. And sometimes as a woman leader, it can put you on the spot a little bit, right? That's something as a woman leader, we got to get over. We got to, if we're taking up a seat at the table, we are there because our input is needed and wanted. And if we have an opinion on something, we need to bring it with confidence. And I think that's just kind of a two-sided thing. Men need to ask for women's input. Women need to give their input.
okay. I hope people are taking notes. I'm taking notes while you talk because I'm like, this is rich. This is so, you're so stinking amazing. Oh my goodness, like the wisdom is just pouring out of you. Okay, so Sherry, how are you, like, so are you doing what you, okay, I want to ask this question, but here's how it keeps coming up in my mind. Are you doing what you thought you'd be doing when you grew up? And then I want to know, like, how were you called into this? Like, what, can you talk a little bit about your calling into, maybe do that first, maybe like talk about a little bit about your calling into what you're doing now. And then are you doing what you thought you'd be doing?
Yeah, yeah. And if we're a believer, if we're a Christ follower, I really feel like we have a calling on our life. It may not be necessarily to work for a church, but it's definitely a calling into ministry. So when I first got married to Geoff, I thought I would be a school teacher forever. That's what I went to college for with my undergrad. And I taught in the inner city Houston school district. And talk about an opportunity. I mean, I knew God had me there. I was able to pray with parents and, talk to kids about who God is. And I was probably breaking all kinds of rules, right? But I was too stupid to know any better, right? And so I just stepped into it. Um, but God led me in different directions. And it's so interesting, Aaron, how we can't have perspective looking forward. We can only have perspective looking backward. So, God led me. We moved from Houston to Charleston, South Carolina. I was assistant principal at a private Christian school, and then stepped into full-time ministry at Seacoast Church, and didn't see myself going there. But the opportunity presented itself. And here's something that my wonderful husband does for me. So an opportunity will open up, and I will sometimes think, I don't know that I'm equipped for that. I don't know that I've got the stuff that that takes. And my husband always steps in and he goes, "You can do that. You can do that." That is such an incredible gift to me in my life. So I stepped into full time ministry. There was a time, Aaron, I think we've talked to you about this. I think we've laughed about this together. Jeff was my boss
Yes.
on staff at church. And that's something I, I don't know that I recommend,
What could go wrong there? What could go wrong there?
but he actually was a great boss. And we love working together, right?
Hmm.
From there, I stepped into a position at Leadership Network, leading innovation labs with church leaders. Okay, so my calling now took a turn again, because now I began to see God was calling me to work with leaders, to work with influencers in the innovation space. I absolutely loved that and learned just so much. From there, I took another interesting turn into a position as a CEO at M.O.P.S International, Mothers of Preschoolers.
Hmm.
And here's the interesting part: I'd never been a CEO before. Where did I get the C, right? The chief, right? Where did I get it? The problem is I didn't. So I stepped into a position where I was way over my head. I loved it, but that was probably the fastest opportunity for growth.
Hmm.
But again, God opened up that door for me. And there are times in my calling, Aaron, maybe you have felt the same, where I have thought, God, do you know what you're doing?
Yeah.
Which is an interesting question, right? God, of course, knows what he's doing, and he's got that perspective going forward that I can't have. And so I just learned about business in that opportunity. From there, I was an executive director at Orange, which is under the Rethink Group based in Atlanta, family ministry. So I kind of made a full circle. While when I was on staff at Seacoast Church, I was children's ministry pastor and then family ministry pastor. Now I made a complete circle back. But here's what's interesting is the path that God led me on. I learned so many unique things related to leadership and family ministry and ministering to moms and all those kinds of things. And so I loved my position at Orange, where I was able to help kind of forge the path for a church of how to partner with the family,
Hmm.
which is critically important. And so now I find myself at a company called One Hope. They are a world missions organization. So again, I feel like my calling has taken a turn, but it's somewhat the same in that at One Hope, what I do is I focus on North America. So I'm vice president of North America,
Hmm.
and help form initiatives and partnerships to help church leaders partner with families. And so our bottom line is helping every kid, every teen, every child, every family dig into God's word. And I love it. I love what I
Okay.
get to do.
Okay, we're going to talk about One Hope because I'm fascinated. I've been doing a lot of research on One Hope, and okay, look, I want to see if we can. I think you could be a really practical blessing to men and women right now who may find themselves in transition. How do you know when to transition from one position to another? Like, how has that worked in your life?
Oh man, I wish I could say, I've changed jobs quite a bit. Um, I wish I could say I've got that part down, right? So, I could lie and say, "Oh, I just hear God's voice clearly and I know, I'm supposed to leave and step into the next."
Uh-huh.
No, I struggle with it every time. I've finally made peace with my personality, and that I love a challenge. I'm a starter. I love to build things. And so after I'm at a position 4 or 5 years where I've kind of, it's a little bit more of a maintain mode, that's when I get itchy inside. I used to
Hmm.
beat myself up for this. I used to say, "Sherry, you don't have any stick to itiveness, right? You just need to stick with where you are." I think you have to listen to God. God, really, I think honestly, and now I think it's a God stirring in my heart, where God, I will have a restlessness, and I sit with God and say, "What is this about?" And I live in that dissonance for a little while,
Hmm.
and then an opportunity will come my way, and I lean into the wisdom of trusted voices in my life. My husband is one of those. I have a mentor. Her name is Sybil. She's in her 80s. We've never lived in the same place, but I will just sit with her and say, Sybil, what do you think about this? And she'll ask me really good, hard questions about, do you think you need to step away because the job has gotten hard?
Hmm.
Or are you unhappy? Or are you having relational, difficulties? Is that why you want to step away? So she helps me tease that out. Is it God's voice, or is it an uncomfortableness that I need to face directly? And so that has always helped me make decisions. I think we cannot underestimate the power of seeking God's face and sitting quietly before Him and just say, God, tell me whatever you need to tell me. I had moments at M.O.P.S International when I thought, I want out of here. I want out of here because this is too hard, right? That's not a reason to leave.
Mm.
Um, and I had to face up to that. And I could feel as I spent time with God saying, Sherry, you need to grow up here. You need to get to be a better leader. You need to lean into others who can help you grow in this area instead of wanting to run. And so that has been a big lesson that I've learned in my life is separating my own desire to run from something because it's hard, or feeling God calling me to another opportunity.
So, in your life, Sherry, and in your transitions, uh, can you compare and contrast um, the forces that at work within you when it comes to these transitions, like as opposed to, because it's so interesting to hear you talk about taking a position and thinking, I'm not qualified to do this. This is way above my pay grade. Um, what is it within you that like the angel on one shoulder, the demon on the other, like that helps you to find balance in the situations and sense of identity, a sense of purpose. I'm thinking fear and passion. I'm thinking insecurities and confidence. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what goes on inside your brain when you're in that situation? Because I think people can really relate to what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I feel like I have a schizophrenic Sherry inside, right? Because
Okay.
I argue with myself inside my head. Um, And my personality, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. I love new opportunities. I love to achieve. I love to succeed. The dark side of me is I always want to look good. I'm afraid of failure, right? So I will do anything it takes to avoid failure. And I have had to really try to discern those voices in my head about, is your fear of failure talking louder than what God is saying about this opportunity? And I do that, I've mentioned prayer, but I also do that through journaling. And I invite just a very few people to speak very honestly, who know me well, who know my motivations, who I give permission to be very, very direct. And Sybil has asked me questions where I'm like, I don't want to answer that question. And that's always a sign to me. If Sybil or another trusted voice asks me a question that I don't want to answer, I need to spend time there. Like, what is going on that I don't want to answer? I want to keep that real answer hidden, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where Satan lives,
Mm-hmm.
is, where you want to hide things. And so that to me has been very revealing,
Mm-hmm.
in the things that I want to keep secret. Those are things where I need to really dive deep.
Mm-hmm.
I have to parse out the voices. And this is where quiet time, time in the word, time in prayer is really, really important. There are so many things that shout at us,
Mm-hmm.
social media, TV, all the things that just in our society that shout at us. And if we don't balance that with more time, talking to God, sitting with God quietly, reading His Word, listening to the trusted godly voices in our life, we're going to be in trouble. So here's an exercise I do, or Aaron, when I'm faced with a big decision. I get up in the morning with a cup of coffee because I'm convinced that God does not want to spend time with me until I'm caffeinated. So,
Pretty much.
I'm
Well,
a
that there's a list of people, Sherry, that are on that list.
I'm a little crabby. So I get my coffee. We have a brown chair that is in our living room, and I sit on the other side. Um, I just ask God, God, I need your wisdom. I need you to speak. And then I picture him in my head, sitting across the room in that brown chair. And one of my favorite life verses is Zephaniah 3:17, where it says, God is with you wherever you go. He is mighty to save. He takes great delight in you. He will quiet you with his love. He rejoices over you with singing. So I picture God saying that to me with the look on his face that would go with those words, right?
Mm,
And so um, it's complete love. It's complete acceptance. In that moment, I can see on God's face, God saying, uh, you're wonderful. I delight in you, Sherry. You're my daughter. I built you. I'm very proud of the things that I have built in you, right? Then I just force myself to sit quiet, which is
hmm
so hard for me, Aaron. It's hard. You've probably already picked up. It's not hard for me to talk. It is hard for me to be quiet. But those are the times when that gives space for God to speak. Um, and that's critically important. So when I'm faced with a decision, God, should I stay or should I go? I do that. I picture
hmm
him across the room, and then I just sit, right? And sometimes I can feel God speaking words. Sometimes it's just an impression.
hmm
Sometimes I have felt God saying something like, Jerry, you decide.
hmm
You decide. And I'm going to bless you wherever you go, as long as your heart is a heart after me. And yeah, I don't know if that
Okay.
helped, but
That is so great. Oh my goodness, this is so rich. Oh, I love you. You're awesome. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about. I want to lean into something you just said. What you were describing sounds like some really healthy rhythms. Can I ask you what other rhythms have you woven into your days, your weeks, your months? Maybe you also, you and Jeff. Like, what are some other healthy rhythms that are part of your life that sustain you in your work and ministry and your
yeah,
relationships?
yeah. Jeff and I now work separate ministry jobs, uh, but we also do things together. And we do some leadership cohorts, we do some coaching, things like that, that we get to do together, and we love it. And, two strong leaders. Jeff is an 8 on the Enneagram, I'm a 3. And you know that when an 8 and a 3 get married, sparks fly, right? Because we both like to be in charge.
Yeah.
And so we've figured out that our rhythm of being together, of honest conversation, of communicating our love and respect to each other is incredibly important. One of the things that we try to do is we don't get a chance to have lunches together or breakfasts together, but we do have a chance. We're empty nesters, so it's a little easier
Mhm.
for us, but we have a chance to have dinner together. We try our best to connect hearts with each other when we have those dinners together. And it's not every night, but like last night, we were able to sit and have dinner together, nothing fancy. But then Jeff asked me the question. He said, where'd you see God at work today in your day? And I answer the question and then I ask it back to him. Where'd you see God at work today? That is a heart connection piece, because we're speaking from our heart, and it allows us to connect together emotionally and also spiritually, which I think those two together right there helps you connect physically, right? So it's
Mhm.
all interconnected there. And I really wish I had caught on to that earlier in our marriage life. In our book, Together, which
Mhm.
is about couples in ministry together, we tell the story about how we almost separated because we didn't have healthy rhythms. We both were workaholics. We weren't paying attention to each other. I got into a place where I really resented some of his leadership and things like that, and got to a very bad place. And so we've realized that communication and connecting with each other in those ways is critically important for our marriage. And so we pay attention to that now. We invest in it. Um, One of the other rhythms, and we're fortunate in that we have 2 kids, 4 grandkids. They all live close. So we love to spend family time together. We're fortunate in that both of our adult children and their spouses like to hang out with us, which it's not always that way. And we have fun together. And Jeff and I will spend time with the grandkids alone because we feel like that's a huge legacy piece for us. We want to pour into our grandchildren. Um, just selfishly, I want to give them ice cream without their mom in the room who says they can't have ice cream, right?
Yep,
They're at grandma's, and what happens at grandma's stays at grandma's.
that's
Uh,
right.
but we have fun together, and Jeff and I really feel like that rhythm of family fun together is really important. The other rhythm that we have is connecting with other couples who we are like-minded with, and you and Rhonda are 2 of those for us. You're one of those couples where I remember, Aaron, we've gotten together with you, and seriously, I laughed so hard that my stomach hurt. Um, and I think you have to have other couples in your life, especially if you're in ministry. You have to have other couples that you can just talk with, and that are safe, that you can share with, that are outside your church. Very important. But I think every couple needs this. You need to be able to connect with another couple who gets you, who doesn't expect things from you, uh, where you can see great things in their marriage that inspire you. So those are really our 3 rhythms: is spending time together, spending time with your family, and spending time with other couples.
Okay. So rich. Okay, so knowing you and you and Jeff, and I knew you in particular, Sherry, and you were calling for partnering with families. Uh, 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 Before we move off this, I want to ask you another question regarding families. Okay, and working with families, we know there's, I've not met any, I've not personally talked to a parent who said we're killing it, we're doing great things. And so everybody, we all kind of just like, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And we think more about kind of what we did wrong. What is something that you and Jeff either stumbled upon or intentionally did that was a huge blessing to to raising kids, to having a family?
Yeah, that's a great question. We had, when we were at Seacoast Church, and our last name is Surratt, which happens to be, at that time, was Greg Surratt, Jeff's older brother, was the lead pastor there. And so if your name was Surratt, you were highly visible. So raising kids in ministry was just a huge thing that I knew we needed to learn about. And we connected ourselves with couples who were a little bit farther down the road. We had a couple in our church where he was on staff, she was not, but we loved what we saw in their family. We loved the open communication that we saw between them. We loved the way their kids were a little bit older than our kids, but they loved ministry. And so we just sat with them and we talked to them about, how do you guys do that, right? And we just learned, and we learned a couple of lessons from them, in that, if you're a pastor, your kids probably spend more time at church than other people's kids do. And it was important to us that our kids loved church, that they didn't feel like this is just a church we attend, but this is a church we get to be involved in, we get to serve in. So we made it a requirement in our family that you serve, but you get to pick where you serve.
Hmm.
And so for our son, that was in youth ministry. He loved, and he started in 6th grade helping in middle school ministry. And our daughter loved music, and so she started playing in the middle school worship band. Even before that, they would help in children's ministry and things like that. We just felt that was very important. So it's really interesting, Aaron. I've learned in my journey of family ministry that there are 2 things that help a kid hang on to their faith after they leave your home, when they go off to college. And the first one is, did they serve? Did they serve in church? Did they connect with a meaningful serving opportunity where they saw God's gifts in them working in their life and in their church? And the second one was, an adult that was not Jeff or I who spoke into their life. Um, and we were fortunate. Our church had a great small group system for kids and for teens. And we made sure that our kids got hooked up with the best small group leaders. So here's the other thing, too. When you're in ministry, I don't think you should hesitate to pull strings for your kids. So my daughter got in a school small group that she didn't love. And so I went to the youth pastor and I said, hey, Brittany isn't connecting. Can you help us? Right. Well, he did. He helped us find another small group for her where she was able to connect. And, Aaron, I wish I could say both of our kids are in ministry today. Our son is executive pastor at a church plant, and our daughter is a sound engineer part-time at the same church. And I wish I could say that our kids' love of God and their love of church came from Jeff and I. Actually, I think it more came from their small group leaders who spoke into their life, who encouraged them, who talked with them about things in the way that our kids would receive it, that they wouldn't have received it from Jeff and I. And so I look back at that, and two successes with our kids is that we made sure they served and we made sure they got connected with a really good adult to speak
Mhm.
into their life.
You are talking so much about mentoring in this conversation. It's just in your DNA. Like,
Yeah.
so let me ask you a question. Is the onus for getting a mentor, is it more like, so talking to people, the older side of our audience, let's say somebody in their 50s who feels like they really want to pour into somebody else, but they don't feel comfortable asking, you know, or a young person who's listening to this, who's like, I want a mentor like Sybil. Like, how does that happen in your journey? Like, how does that happen? Can you give some advice to picking a mentor? And I want you to speak both to the 20 something who's looking for a mentor and the 50ish above who wants to pass on their wisdom and wants to mentor somebody.
Yeah, yeah. Finding a mentor is hard. And I think, a couple of groundwork things is if you're looking for a mentor, you got to know yourself.
Okay.
You got to find somebody who gels with you personality wise. So I met Sybil at a conference, and she is such a spicy lady. She just is sassy. She's speaks her mind, right? She's hilarious. She makes me laugh. So sense of humor is really important to me. It's part of who I am,
Hmm.
and that's who I want in a mentor. Someone who's able to where we can laugh together, right, and not neither one of us takes each other too seriously. And so knowing yourself, and also I think knowing what is it you want out of a mentor relationship. So I've had young ladies approach me and say, oh, would you mentor me? And my first question is, why do you want a mentor?
Mm.
And if they can't answer that question, then I say, no, it's not time. I think you need to be clear, right? A mentor, I think you need to get specific with what you want. A mentor is not just somebody you hang out with. A mentor is somebody who helps you take the next steps, maybe in your career, maybe in your spiritual life, maybe in your marriage. But be clear on what you want, and because that'll help you bring great questions to the table for your mentor. So one thing
Mhm.
I don't do with Sybil is I don't expect her to just try to figure out what I want and need and go after it. We have figured out a rhythm together based on why I wanted a mentor and what I needed. Um, that helps me kind of get at the stuff inside, right? So it's not Sybil telling me what to do.
Mhm.
It's her asking me great questions that help me figure out where is God leading me and what is it that I need to do. I look for women who I connect with, women who I like, women who I think, oh, I'd like to hang out with them. They're really wise. I like this part of their life. I think I could learn from them. And then I just go ask, right?
Mm.
So when people will say, "Oh, I can't find a mentor," and I'll say, "Who have you asked?" Um, and I also believe in starting with short-term relationships, um, because sometimes a mentor is not a good fit. Like you go into a store, you try on a coat, right? It's too tight, you take it off. Um, I think mentors are the same thing. You try, you go into an agreement and say, let's try this for 6 months. And then if we don't feel like this is working, then we will call it quits and neither one will be offended.
Mm.
And I think that's important too. Uh, you got to find the right mentor, but you got to be active and looking.
Okay. So much wisdom. I'm watching the clock here. We got a hard stop coming up. I want to make sure a couple more questions for you. Okay. I want to talk about One Hope and your ministry there. And because listening to you talk, it, it, what a perfect fit. Like it involves obviously ministry and pouring into the next generation, families, equipping young people, resourcing the church, mentoring. It just seems like it has so many of the things you've been talking about. Can you talk a little bit about what One Hope is?
Yeah. So I said it's a missions organization. They work in every country in the world. They've been
Okay.
around for a long time. It's was founded by Bob Hoskins, now led by his son Rob Hoskins, and it was started a long time ago with a vision from God for Bob. And the vision was there are kids and teens who are dying without knowing about me, God, and about my word. And so Bob just went after it and said, let's solve this. Let's build a solution for this. And so that's what he did. And so they started in a few countries and have now expanded to every country. And here's what they do: they work with people that are on the ground. They work with church leaders who are in that country, and they figure out what the needs are. How can we help people here know the gospel, spend time in God's word? And so sometimes it's bringing resources that can help them do that. Other times it's developing programs with partnership with the church that can help people go deeper into God's word. Their tagline is God's word, every child. And with
Mm.
child, I mean child and teen. Um, and so I was just recently hired. I've only been with the company 3 months now to focus on North America because North America has never been a focus of theirs. North America is one of the richest regions. It's over resourced. Why would you need to focus on North America? Well, the stats tell us that North America has some issues. I was just reading a stat the other day that said by 2050, 35% of committed Christian teens will have stepped away from their faith.
Mm.
So that means if you look at the subset of teens that we have that are committed Christians, which is, compared to all teens, is a minority, we're going to lose a third of them if we don't step in and do something. We
Mm.
know that families are under stress, financial stress, social stress, marriage stress. What are we going to do about that? We also know that the biggest influence in a kid's life is the mom and dad or the caregiver. Um, and so we need to come alongside them. We need to come alongside the church and help them resource the family. So that's what we do in North America. We're starting some partnerships with focusing on under-resourced areas.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a really interesting organization, Aaron, that I stumbled across the other day, and it's called Urban Hope. And they focus on inner city areas in New York City, and in New Jersey and in Philadelphia, and they come at it from a multifaceted viewpoint, which I love. They partner with schools to provide tutoring. They focus on third grade literacy and fifth grade math skills because they've determined that if we focus on those two things, we can actually impact the prison rate of
Mm.
incarceration. And so they also come in and bring in food and other necessities that the family might need. They focus on the housing projects around New York City and in other urban areas. They come in and they do evangelism events. And so we as at One Hope are going to partner with them to help strengthen these events, to help see how we can help them further their traction. And so it doesn't make sense in North America to go reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to find out who's already doing a great job and how can we come alongside. So we're partnering with schools with different initiatives. We're resourcing leaders in leadership development. We have a tool at One Hope called feed.bible, and it's a free resource for student ministry pastors. We provide free small group series that you can use in your youth group. We provide discussion questions around the core parts of the Bible to help a teenager understand what God's word is and what it has to say and how it applies to their life. We're going to be expanding to go direct to families,
Hmm.
direct to parents with resources to help them have conversations with their kids and help lead their families in scripture engagement. And that's really the bottom line of One Hope. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to focus on under-resourced areas, stressed families. We're going to work through leaders. We're going to work through schools, the influencers, and we're going to try to provide everything we can to help a family, kids and teens, dig deeper into God's word.
Oh, and anybody who knows you is not surprised why that is such an amazing fit for you. What a great calling. Wow. I'm going to put a link to the website in the show notes
Yes.
and a link, make sure information about the feed.bible. And okay, as you wrap up, last minute here, all right? What's something that's bringing joy to your journey right now, Sherry?
Yeah, I would say two things, if I can have two. The first one is connecting with leaders who are passionate about helping kids and teens discover who God is. That has been such an incredible journey of joy over these 3 months that I've been with One Hope. And I'm amazed, Aaron, at the sharp young leaders that are out there, children's ministry leaders, student ministry leaders, family ministry leaders that are so passionate and will do anything to partner with a family. The other one is a personal one. We have our youngest grandson is 17 months old, and he was born with a lot of difficulties at birth. In fact, the doctors said he wouldn't make it. He is the happiest, funniest little guy who makes, whenever our family gets together, he's the center. He just makes us all laugh, claps all the time, smiles all the time. The only word he knows is hi. So he says it like 50 million times, hi, hi, hi. And that's just a source of joy in our family. And every time I look at him, I see God's hand.
Mm,
I see God's healing hand, and it's joy.
joy. Well, it's a joy talking to you, and I'm so grateful for your partnership in ministry. And Sherry, what an honor! And this conversation is going to be such a blessing. And I'm grateful for your time. And all right, thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaron.